morning. Ready or not, we are in a new work week. So let's get started by thinking a little bit about what the Lord may have for us today. So we're still talking about trusting God, and I want to talk to you about what you can do to trust God when you don't trust God. Kind of an interesting thought, right? I think probably if we're all honest with ourselves, there are times in which we're not getting the kind of feedback that we would like in order to engender and increase and build up our trust in God, because we're not seeing his interaction with us in any kind of a positive way. Well, you know what? There was a prophet one time that kind of had this same issue, and his name was Habakkuk. And he was living at a time in which God's people really had lousy leadership, and they weren't doing well at all. And Habakkuk was seeing all these negative things occur among God's people. And, he came to a place where he said, how long are you going to let this go on, Lord? So I want to read a few verses for you. This is in the book of Habakkuk in the first chapter. And read a few verses here, and then we'll talk about a few things here, okay? So it says, the burden or oracle, I'm reading out of the Amplified Bible, by the way. And it says in verse 1, the burden or oracle, the thing to be lifted up, which Habakkuk the prophet saw. So in other words, okay, here's the thing. Here's the issue. What was it? O Lord, Habakkuk is saying to God, O Lord, how long shall I cry for help and you will not hear? Or cry out to you of violence and you will not save? Why do you show me iniquity and wrong, and yourself look upon or cause me to see perverseness and trouble? For destruction and violence are before me, and there is strife and contention arises. Wow, this is a mouthful. Habakkuk is now complaining to God. And in these complaints, I think we can maybe see three complaints that he has here as we read through these verses, okay? Complaint number one, we might say it this way: God, you're not listening to me. I'm praying, I'm communicating with you, but I'm not getting anything back. You're just simply not listening. Verse 2, O Lord, how long shall I cry for help and you will not hear? Now, do we ever have that kind of a thing going on in our life where we've been praying to God about a certain thing and we're not getting the kind of response that we desire or expect, and we begin to wonder, are my prayers doing anything? Are they worthwhile whatsoever? So what do we do when we are trying to trust God, but we don't at that moment because we're not getting the feedback that we want from him? Okay? All right. Second complaint. God, you're not only are you not listening, God, you're not doing anything. Verse 2 again. I cry out to you of violence and you will not save. You're not listening to me, number one. And number two, you're not doing anything. I don't see anything happening in the circumstance for God's people right now. And so Habakkuk was having a hard time trusting God because of the fact that he did not see the fruit of his prayers and did not see God's work God at work to resolve the problems and the issues that God's people had, which was basically they were living terrible lives at that point, and they were not following the Lord, and they were going their own way, and they were going to reap some very, very severe consequences because of it. Okay, and then the third is, and we're going to skip all the way down in the first chapter to verse 12, okay? The third thing is, we might say to God sometimes, this isn't fair. and I don't understand your plan here. Look at verse 12. Are not you from everlasting, O Lord my God, my Holy One? We shall not die, O Lord. You have appointed the Chaldean to execute your judgment, and you, O rock, have established him for chastisement and correction. The Lord had told Habakkuk, I am at work, and I'm raising up the Chaldeans, who were an even more evil people, to come and chastise God's people. And Habakkuk, when he heard that plan, he goes, whoa, what kind of plan is this? It's not fair that you would use a more evil race of people and a nation of people to chastise your own people. I don't understand your plan, God. Why are you doing that? So we got three thoughts here. Number one, when you're trying to trust God when you don't trust him. Number one, because you don't think he hears your prayers. Number two, because he's apparently not doing anything. And number three, you don't understand his plans, his ways, his will that he is working in life. So what's the answer to those three things? Well, it's pretty obvious, isn't it? Answer to number one, whether you know it or not, whether you believe it or not, when you pray to God, he hears your prayer. And he will respond to you. We have to keep an open heart and mind to understand that God's response to us may not be what we planned out in our own heart and our mind that should happen in this situation. But it doesn't mean that he does not hear us. Going back to the 5th and the 6th verse of the 1st chapter. Look around you, Habakkuk, replied the Lord. That's the Lord coming back to him. Look around you among the nations and see and be astonished and astounded, for I am putting into effect a work in your days such that you would not believe it if it were told you. For behold, I am rousing up Chaldeans, that bitter and impetuous nation, who march through the breadth of the earth to take possession of dwelling places that do not belong to them. The Chaldeans are terrible and dreadful, and their justice and dignity proceed only from themselves. And he goes on to describe how bad they are. But God says, I'm raising those people up, and guess what? They're going to teach my people a lesson. I don't imagine Habakkuk, if he were to plan out a resolution to what he was describing as, what he saw. How long shall I cry to you for help and you won't hear, or cry out to you of violence and you will not save? Why do you show me iniquity and wrong, and you yourself look upon, cause me to see perverseness and trouble, for destruction and violence before me, and there's strife and contention? Here's all the problems, all listed out. And I don't imagine Habakkuk would have come up with the plan that God was going to use. And so, the lessons learned. Habakkuk, I did hear you. Habakkuk, I have a plan, and I'm working it out, even though you don't know it. In fact, you wouldn't even believe me if I told you, even as he began to unfold it to him. And Habakkuk, you may not always understand my ways. You may never understand my ways, my plan, how I work things out. Okay, there's our lessons. In your life, even though you may have times where you're not even sure your prayers work, they do. God will tell you. He will whisper to you. He will speak to you that your prayers work. You have to be open-hearted and open-minded enough to understand that as he hears your prayers and he begins to act, even though you may not see it, learned this same lesson too. He thought he was the only righteous one left, and the Lord let him know that there were a lot of people that had not bowed their knee to Baal. So, know that God hears your prayers. Know that He is at work, and know that you may not understand, and in fact, most of the time, we probably don't understand how God is working all these things out together. But He is, and He's smarter than you. And so you let God be God, and you let you be His child, so that when you pray, you should always end your prayer with, nevertheless, not my will, but your will be done. You do that, and even when you're not feeling like you trust God, you can kind of come back off that edge. And you can say, yeah, I may not feel like it right now, but God is God, and He knows what He's doing, and I can trust that. Okay? All right, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.